Hello, I'm Wendy. Today I'm painting trees and flowers. It's a loose watercolour demonstration and I'm going to be painting from a photograph. This is the photograph that I'm going to be working from. It's one of my own photos taken in a local wood nearby, local wooden park where I walk the dog quite often, and it really is one of my favourite subjects for painting. I think it's because there's lots of woods and trees around me, you get familiar with them and you love them. This painting is an immediate, intuitive response to the subject matter, and this demo is the first time that I'd painted it. I suppose with hindsight I would have made some changes, but I think that's generally the case, isn't it, when you're an artist, and we have to live with that. And importantly, to learn from it, of course, as well. It's always a learning process, no matter how long you've been painting. This is going to be a very loose painting, and here is the very loose drawing, as you can see. You can download this drawing. There is a link in the description box. You may feel happier doing your own drawing, or even better still, working from one of your own photographs. This is not going to be a step-by-step tutorial with the aim of you painting this scene just like me. It's more to show you the procedure that I use in tackling a subject like this. I always start with the background and work around the painting, gradually building up the colours and, more importantly, the tones. I always paint what I see, and what I saw and liked about this photograph was the tonal contrast and the busyness of it. We must all see things differently, so don't try to copy this painting. Instead, take the procedure on board and use your own brush marks and colours if you wish to as well. Talking of colours, the palette I used for this particular painting was very similar to the one that I used in a video that I made some time ago, and again there's a link in the description box below. I used Prussian blue as the base blue with some yellows and raw sienna, and for the darker greens I added burnt sienna or burnt umber. Lately I've been using a little bit of Dioxazine violet as well to add in to help with the darks. I started by roughly masking out the cow parsley flowers in front of the tree. When that was all dry, then I put in the sky colours and a little bit of the suggestion of some hedgerows in the distance. It's important to keep the sky very, very light so that you're going to be able to get that contrast between the light sky and the dark twigs and leaves, which is what this picture is all about. When the foreground wash was totally dry, I added some more stems and maybe a few more little flowers using masking fluid. You can put the masking fluid on top of the paint that you've already put on, and when you rub the masking fluid off you'll see that colour underneath, so it's quite a handy way of getting some depth into the foreground here. I'm using a colour shaper for this and not a brush. A colour shaper is a rubber-ended tool that pastel artists use for blending their colours. It's very good for putting on the masking fluid because it doesn't actually affect the rubber end of this tool at all, and you can rub off the masking fluid with your fingers when you're finished. I started some work on the foreground using sort of a dry brush technique, using some quite stiff paint with the brush on its side, and then I gradually built up the greens. I tried to use a variety of colour and a variety of tones in there. I left the foreground at this stage and then moved on to the tree, first of all mapping out the branches with a very light green. I could have used another colour for that, I could have used raw sienna or a light brown, but I wanted to make sure that I placed those branches well, not the right position, but the position that I wanted them in for the composition. You'll see the next thing that I do in a picture like this then is to paint on the foliage. You don't want to paint the branches on first because you won't get any, they just won't look right, they won't look as if they're intertwining and going in and out of the leaves. So I put on this sort of skeleton, which hopefully I won't lose, and then I'll put on the foliage, working in a similar way up to a certain stage as I did in the foreground with some dry brush. I switched brushes at this stage with a smaller one and maybe a rigger to do the little tiny leaves on the sort of the edges of the clumps. I thought with this tree being so far forward in the picture, I didn't want to leave the dry brush strokes as they were, so I did put on some of these more dotty shapes for the leaves. Possibly overdid it in the end, but maybe I'd do less next time. But I think it worked. It makes a nice busy sort of feel to the tree. I was very careful at this stage actually. I kept looking back on the photograph because it's important to leave those negative spaces, those shapes of the sky showing through. Otherwise you're going to get too blocked in effect. So take care with that, and it's always on my mind, and if I do another one in the future I'll maybe make those spaces just a little bit more prominent. Again, moving around the picture, the next part I tackled was the tree trunk, and you'll see that I used a variety of colours and tones here, working mainly wet into wet, trying to vary the strokes as well. Again, I'm not finishing the areas totally. I think that is a mistake to concentrate too much on one particular area of a painting, because you can get too bogged down in it and it might not just work with the rest of the picture. So leave things at least 3/4 done and move on to the next area of the painting. I think you can see that you can put the branches on in between now those clumps of leaves, and it's working better, I think, than doing the branches first, because you can do some sort of hit and misses with the branches where they're going behind the leaves. I'm using some real darks there on the left hand side of the tree, which is in shadow. I feel it really starting to come together at this stage now, and I hope when you're painting something along these lines that you don't give up when it gets to that terribly messy stage, because it does come together here when you get the branches and the twigs in, particularly as you'll see the smaller twigs. I'm going to speed up part of this demonstration shortly. So using a smaller brush, I'd put some of the darker leaves on there. That area did need to be darkened. I might have gone a little bit too bitty with it, but it's okay. I quite like it. And then the darker tones, just finishing off some of the branches and the trunk. As I said, now this area, I've worked around it and got to this stage now, and it's just about finished. I will just put a few little twigs on there with a rigger. Quite importantly, those little twigs and things make it much more interesting. little tip here for you if you don't know. If the paint is wet, you can scrape through it with something like I'm doing, or the edge of a credit card, something like that, or even your fingernail, and you can suggest the light twigs going over the trunk of the tree. I put a mount around the picture at this stage. I find that does help to work out the composition, and particularly in the foreground here, I wanted to just get a bit better idea of where to put some of these darks. The masking fluid is clearly still in place, and it's quite helpful seeing that, so you can put some of the darks around those light areas, which will help them stand out once the masking fluid comes off. Just a few final details on the trunk with the rigger. There's always a few bits and pieces of bark or ivy on the side of these tree trunks. And the suggestion of a few leaves or ivy on the trunk itself with a little bit of shadow under those light lines that we left can be quite effective. So when the foreground was totally dry, I rubbed off the masking fluid. And I just suggested a little bit of colour here in the cow parsley, a few sort of grey greens and a little bit of pink that you quite often see in the flowers. I've speeded this last little bit of the painting up again for you. I mixed a very, very dark green, and what I'm doing here with a very fine brush is I'm just accentuating some of the little white flowers by putting little dabs of dark green underneath them. Just to spell them out a little bit more, to aid the contrast and to give them a little bit more shape. I separated some of the clumps of white or pinky white here as well, using these little dark green marks, and finally I added a few more stems with the dark green. I always have my opaque white to hand, and then if you feel you just wanted to make a few more little changes to the flower shapes at the front there, then you can do that with your opaque white. I use pen white that's listed in the description box below. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video and it inspired you to paint your own picture. If you'd like to post your work and receive some feedback from me, then I am setting up a Facebook group for my channel for subscribers, which should be active pretty shortly, and I'm going to put the link in the description box below. So I hope to see you there. Bye for now, and do subscribe to my channel if you want to join the group or just don't want to miss what's coming up next. Thank you. Bye bye.